Greetings from Firstbeat and welcome to today's webinar, Work-Life Balance, Finding Personalized Recovery Strategies to be More Energetic at Work and During Leisure. Work-life balance is a trendy topic that means different things for different people and can be approached from many viewpoints. Obviously, it's a very broad concept and way beyond the scope of one webinar. So today I will approach it from a data-based viewpoint to offer a few concrete examples and tips for helping to find a better balance between the different demands of life. And beyond that, having enough energy and resilience not only to cope, but to perform at a high level and enjoy life. My name is Tiina Hoffman. I'm an exercise physiologist at Firstbeat and I work in our international wellness and performance services sector. My own background is in sports, as an athlete and a coach, and after several years of applied research projects in overtraining and heart rate variability, I landed at Firstbeat about 8 years ago, where I'm applying my education and sports background to deliver the Firstbeat lifestyle assessment solution for corporates and regular working people around the world. I deal with today's topic on almost daily basis, as do many of you, both personally, to keep our own lives in balance, and professionally, guiding our clients towards better health and well-being. Before we get going further, just a few details about the webinar. The chat window is open for your questions, and I will read out any questions at the end of the webinar. And we are recording the webinar, so the podcast will be available on our website afterwards. All right, some of the listeners today might not be familiar with Firstbeat Lifestyle Assessment, so I will start with just a quick review of what it is. Lifestyle assessment is not today's focus per se, but I will demonstrate my examples via Firstbeat graphics because they illustrate the topic very well. If you want to learn more details about the lifestyle assessment method itself, please contact us, or you can check our website's Wellness Services section, or stay tuned to an Introduction to Lifestyle Assessment webinar next month that will actually go through the what, how, for whom, and why of lifestyle assessment, going more into detail about the method. There really is no one-size-fits-all fix to today's topic. Solutions for better work-life balance differ depending on personal and work-related circumstances, as we all are aware of. I will outline some typical stressors and share a few examples that demonstrate this challenge. For example, in the area of heavy physical work, shift work, and IT and computer work. And at the end of the webinar, I'll take a look at a few practical examples of personalized strategies and how they can be integrated into one's daily life. All right, so Firstbeat Lifestyle Assessment, what it is when I refer to that, it's a 3-day measurement of heart rate variability that's conducted in the person's daily life, during work, during leisure time, and while the person is sleeping. And it looks at stress management, recovery and sleep, and physical activity and exercise as sort of the crucial pieces of the lifestyle puzzle that we are all trying to fix. Here's an example of a typical lifestyle assessment report, and then some of the examples that I'll be showing will be repeating these type of graphics that you can see here. And the next slide actually opens that up a little bit further. So really, when we do this type of an assessments, we are not talking about avoiding stress, but about the management of the overall load, what I sometimes call the load of life, how to manage and balance that in the best possible way between the demands between work and leisure time and the demands and the balance between load and recovery, doing things and then resting. And really the topic can be approached via these types of simple questions. Does the person sleep enough? And do they actually recover when they sleep? Are they able to recover during the daytime? Is there physical activity during the days to provide some health and fitness benefits? And of course, many other things surrounding these questions, whether it has to do with nutrition or weight management, things like that. The colors in the report, just sort of a quick key to them in case this is really new to you. The red color that you will be seeing throughout the examples that I'm sharing, it means some kind of stress or activation level of the body. It's a normal part of life, includes positive and negative events. That's what it is required of us to perform and meet the daily challenges. In addition to that, the green color should be seen in the report. It's called recovery. It means lowering of the activation, lowering of the heart rate, increased heart rate variability, and that's what we would like to see at least during the sleep time and ideally also throughout the day at the different times. And the blue color means some kind of physical activity or exercise. So that's just a quick key to what the colors mean. And my next slide kind of goes beyond that and looks at the sort of a scale of some of the very typical stressors, things that stress us or things that consume our resources as part of our daily lives, and how big their effect might have on sleep and on overall balance and well-being as a result, because obviously sleep is the most crucial time for getting recovery. And if you're looking through the things that I've listed here underneath these graphs, going from sort of a slight or a small effect to moderate and a bigger effect on overall recovery, you can see that some of the things are such that we can affect them and make choices about them, such as how much alcohol are we going to have, how many drinks are we going to have, what kind of exercise are we going to do, and events that we do in the evening, whereas other are factors of life, things that we have to live with, and then focus on other things what we can affect. So if there are some kind of illnesses or medications that are part of our life, obviously we can't just get rid of that, but then we can do other things to try to balance the life better. Or for example, jet lag or travel, it's something that we know that's going to affect our balance quite a bit, our ability to sleep. But if that belongs to your job, you're not going to be able to again get rid of that completely, but hopefully make some good choices to support your well-being even on those kind of heavier days. Alcohol, you can see in the example here, this is also very strongly supported by the Firstbeat database, which nowadays is about 200,000 measurements that we have accumulated over the last 10 or 15 years. We can very clearly see a strong dose-response relationship between the more alcohol you drink, the bigger the effect on recovery is. And when you are starting to talk about 5 or more units, quite often the amount of actual quality recovery during the sleep period can be very minimal or in any way very much compromised. But also some positive things such as exercise. We know that we should exercise, it's good for us, and we encourage our clients to do that as well. But acutely, if a person does a moderate to heavy exercise in the evening, it might have a moderate effect on their recovery. Or if they do some kind of maximal effort, like a team sports player has a hockey game or a football game in the evening hours, 8 to 10 or 9 to 11 p.m., for example. So it might really have a very strong effect on that person's recovery throughout the following night. And of course, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't exercise, but then take that into consideration in their weekly training program to make sure that that doesn't play too big of a role during the course of the week. So these are the types of things that we are going to be sort of dealing with and discussing. And when I mentioned the database, in addition to alcohol, we have seen some very strong trends from that as well. For example, people with a lower fitness level in general have less recovery over the course of the 24-hour period. So fitness clearly has a positive effect on our ability to recover. High body mass index is correlated with less recovery during the measurement period. And also subjective feelings. People who subjectively feel more stressed tend to have less recovery in their days. And if you're interested in these types of database findings in more detail, we had a webinar on that in December, and you can find the podcast on our website, and it outlines and goes through more detail these types of population level trends that we have been able to find. All right, then moving on to actual practical cases and a few examples. I'm starting off with a few examples from physical workload, so work days that are physically very demanding. And here's an example of an older guy doing a construction job on a deadline. So a very tight project that they had to finish, 11-hour workday, what you can see here. And when you look at the graph above that, you can see that you mainly see blue color in there, meaning that it was like exercise for him. It was physically very, very strenuous day. His heart rate has been way above 100 beats per minute throughout most of the workday. And then when you look at the following night, you can see that most of the night his body is still somehow coming down from the exertion of the day, and he's only just getting some recovery at the end of the at the end of his sleep period. He was sleeping 6 hours and 45 minutes and just getting just over an hour of actual good quality recovery at the end of that. This guy was not fit, fairly poor or low level of fitness. So obviously this kind of a heavy physical exertion had a huge effect on him, and he really sort of paid the price the following night. Of course, we can't avoid these kind of days in certain jobs completely, but recovery strategies then become very important. How does the person spend the evening after the work? Are they taking time to get some recovery there? How long do they sleep? Are they maximizing the duration of the sleep? And of course, how do they catch up during the days off? And then the fitness level obviously playing a big role. And in addition to that, should mention things like hydration and nutrition. So obviously when you're working this hard for this long of a time, it's very important for overall balance and being able to cope with that they eat enough good quality food and also hydrate throughout the day. But talking about the fitness level, this next slide demonstrates that a little bit further. So this is the same job his partner, who is a younger guy with a much higher fitness level. So when you look at his work day here, the same 11.5-hour work period, it still looks light blue, meaning that it was like light physical activity for him. So obviously also for this guy, the physical load was quite heavy, but most likely because his younger age and better fitness level, he's able to get a pretty good recovery the following night, as you can see here in this period. He actually goes to bed earlier, so he's making a good decision, goes to bed at 9 p.m. after a tough day, so he gets an 8-hour, 15-minute sleep, and most of it actually shows up as very good recovery, a little bit of a delay. Big difference between this one and the previous one where the other guy's night really was quite red, and it took a long time for him to get recovery. The story between these two guys actually continues into their day off, and then really demonstrated the importance of day off strategies. I don't have the picture here, but basically what happened is that the first guy, the older unfit guy, he had a restful day off. He didn't have any drinks. He recovered, rested up very well, and he had a nice green recovery the following night. Pretty much this whole Saturday night showed up as nice recovery. So he was able to charge his batteries and kind of catch up from the heavy exertion of the previous day. Whereas his partner, who was younger and fitter, ended up having sort of a typical thing what people do to try to get rid of some of the stress. So he wanted to relax and had some drinks, 4 or 5 drinks in the evening, and he actually ended up having a lot worse recovery during his day off than he had after the physically heavy load. So then we can raise the question of which one of them was actually better recovered when Monday morning came around. Was maybe the older guy, he was able to maybe charge his batteries better if he really took the time and effort to make sure that he got good high quality recovery during his day off. And I show one more slide about this because obviously all of us who have been working in this sector in many countries have seen that the effect of alcohol on good quality recovery is quite big. It's clearly something that we need to be aware of, and particularly at times when we are for some reason stretched or really having tough days, whether they are physically tough days or mentally tough days. If we then add alcohol to the equation, then usually the effect is not so good. So here is an example of a different guy, 2 days from the same guy. Here is his first day, physically tough day. As you can again see, very high heart rate, a lot of physical activity throughout the workday. Then he has an evening at home and goes to bed and gets mostly good recovery the following night. Takes a little bit of delay, but still almost half of his sleep period is good quality recovery, and he's sleeping 8.5 hours. Then the next night he has a physically easier day. It's not as tough. Subjectively he rated it as an easier day, and also the heart rate graph shows the same. There's not as much light blue color. The heart rate is not as high, but then he had 4 drinks in the evening, and you can see there's again a bit of recovery, but only 23% of his sleep period now shows up as recovery. So quite a big role that alcohol plays in that. And what we discuss with our clients in this area, of course, is the balance over the week. Doesn't mean that that the guy can't handle this kind of a night here and there, but particularly if they are very exertive, heavy days, and they are really struggling with the balance, then alcohol is something to definitely to know that that's not going to, like the misconception typically can be that it will help me relax and after a tough day it will give me a better sleep, but physiologically, unfortunately, we rarely see that kind of an effect. Very similar observation I've seen in many of my personal experiences and also with many clients is with jet lag. So jet lag, as we know, it's a very heavy stress on the body. It compromises our ability to get good quality sleep, but most of us can kind of handle it pretty well if there aren't too many other stressors that are affecting us at the time. But then if we, for example, combine jet lag with alcohol, we have seen very clearly that it potentiates the effect. And a night that might look like this, then with a couple of drinks added to the mix, it might look all red because the heart rate is just not able to recover nearly as well. These are the types of things that we can often make choices about. And for example, personally, that's something that I've just learned to do, that during the first couple of days of jet lag, I try to stay away from any drinks or not go beyond a small glass of wine for sure, because I would like to maximize my ability to get some good quality sleep during those key days when I'm trying to adjust to the new time zone. All right, and then moving on, still kind of in the area of physical work, or of course it can be also a mentally strenuous day, any kind of a work day that's very hard on us, whether it's mentally or physically. It doesn't always overload us. This is an example from another guy who was doing physically heavy work. It was a tough day. He knew it was tough for him. He was tired, and he took the evening just relaxing. He decided that on that day, that was the best thing he could do, just read and relax and recover. And you can see a nice amount of recovery in his evening for several hours before bedtime, then maybe some home tasks and chores here in the evening, and then a nice beautiful recovery the following night. So if the physical worker's fitness level is appropriate, they take care of themselves and they ensure some kind of restful activities, of course, it's quite possible to get good recovery after that. Sometimes it's just the decision of what's the ticket for that particular day. Many times the coach might tell that, okay, you really need to fit in some exercise into the program, but sometimes rest might be just the thing that you need after a heavy day, and then that allows, again, good quality sleep after that. Okay, and then I took one example from shift work because we get a lot of questions about that, how shift work affects the person's physiology and how it's shown up in the different kinds of reports. Of course, shift work, particularly night shifts, it's kind of a world of its own. It's a major stressor on the body that really puts the balance to test and requires very good lifestyle choices and strategies to allow good performance. Much harder to get things in balance if you are switching between different shifts. This example here is his leisure time, and then this guy took a nap, 2 hour 45-minute nap in the afternoon or in the early evening, and then he went to work about 10 p.m. and worked till 7 a.m. Here is his work period. He got some sleep afterwards, 5 hours only, which is pretty typical for night shift workers. Most of the sleep is green recovery, so he was getting reasonably good recovery, but of course it's easy to see that if you only get 5 hours after a night shift, it easily can start adding up unless, for example, the day off strategies are really considered. And typically when different projects measure shift workers, they tend to measure enough days to also see what the day off after the night shift looks like, what is the sleep pattern like in there. From this example, I think it's good to note a few things. When I had the discussion with the guy, I clearly gave him a sort of a thumbs up or pluses about the nap, because if you're only able to sleep 5 hours, you really do need to supplement that with some kind of sleep during the daytime. It doesn't show up as green here, maybe because he had a busy morning, was doing a lot of stuff, so maybe he just wasn't quite able to get to the optimal recovery. But as you can see, if you look at the heart rate graph, this is the heart rate here, the blue line, heart rate drops nicely, close to his sleep time level, and also the stress level, the height of the red bars, drops lower. So clearly his activation level is drop, and he's getting some good benefits from that, even if it doesn't show up as green in this example. And for the same guy, the next day he did the same thing, and then the nap actually showed up as green. So it's not the color in the report that always tells the whole story, but it's the choice that he made, that he took the time to take a nap. Another thing that with this particular person we clearly discussed was physical activity. It's easy to see that his work is not physically heavy. It's all some kind of mental workload. It's actually, this is a woman. It was a nurse supervisor. So his work was mentally tough, but not physically tough. And to sort of counterbalance that, some kind of physical activity would be a great addition to the program. And we discussed that at length, because the first instinct for her was that she just doesn't have the energy to exercise when she does night shifts. But then we talked about the benefits of light physical activity, even just something like a half an hour walk or something like that. It would really be a nice addition to that. And it can really help get some good quality sleep too, because it makes your body physically more tired than it would be from just mental stress alone. All right, and one more graphic sample I have here. This is more from the world that many of us work with: computer work, desk work, IT work, where the challenges come from a lot of load on the brain rather than on the body. The work days can be mentally tough, busy, and demanding. And this is an example from a client recently. All of her days were like this. There was not any moments of recovery during any of her days at all. But when she went to sleep, she had good recovery, as you can see here. So a young person in very good fitness, and took special time to exercise on at least 3 or 4 days a week. She said that she found that to be a very important thing to do, so that she has enough energy to sort of forget the work day and then get her mind elsewhere. It wasn't a particularly high intensity exercise, which probably helped her get good sleep the following night. If it was really high intensity, then it might actually disturb her following night sleep just a little bit. The discussion with this person, which is a very typical discussion with many people who work in these types of jobs, is the lack of any kind of recovery during the daytime. Many times people feel like they are sort of going from the moment they get up till the evening, and then trying to figure out how to find some time to slow down and recover for a little bit. And like with her, that was clearly the goal that she set, how to learn to take those few moments, even 5-10 minutes, to take it easy, take a nap, take a rest, take a few deep breaths, something like that, so she could actually shift down for a little bit and then have more energy for the rest of the day. But otherwise, a nice balance between the mentally loading work is nicely balanced by some kind of physical load, and then getting good sleep after that. And that's probably one of the reasons why we really are coaching a lot of clients to not neglect to include some kind of physical activity into their days, because it does help balance stressful jobs quite well. All right, so then in the end, it's just a couple of sort of strategies what we end up discussing with clients. What can they actually do? Obviously, the key is to find what works for you personally or what works for your client, and something that they can realistically integrate into their daily life. So the strategies vary hugely between different people. They have to enjoy it, and they have to be able to actually do that. Of course, many kinds of mind-body type activities are very popular and common these days. I'll show an example of that in the next slide. Different kind of breathing exercises, meditation, mindfulness, great activities that people can integrate into their day, even just for short periods of time during the day. But then it can also be something else, something not so consciously mind-body, but maybe just something that they like to do. Hobbies around the house, around the yard, going to the nature, walking in the woods, fishing. Really different strategies can help us leave the work day behind and then put our mind somewhere else. And the balance depends a little bit. If the work is more physically demanding and heavy, then maybe the relaxing activity needs to be something calm and easy and peaceful. Whereas if the work is very mentally stressful and hectic, then sometimes some kind of physical activity can actually be a better balance for that, going outside and doing some kind of physical movement to not stress the brain in the evening, but instead stress the body in the evening. This next slide shows a couple of examples here. Here is the meditation example I mentioned. We are seeing more and more people are actively engaged in some kinds of meditation type activities to really teach their body and their mind to turn off, even in the middle of a workday or in the evening after a busy day. And then of course the assessment report can nicely show that color, but in the way the person can learn to feel what it feels like when they do these kind of strategies, and it should be fairly easy for most people to integrate into their life. Here's an example of what I call mindless TV after work. So it doesn't have to be meditation. Sometimes it can just go on the couch and watch something that you don't have to really do any thinking. You can just chill and relax and watch something that you are enjoying. Or music could be the same thing. This is an example from a colleague who usually has very red work days. She very rarely has any kind of recovery in there, and she had learned some simple deep breathing exercises to teach herself to slow down, and she was starting to see little green bars when she did that. Deep breathing can actually affect on your nervous system, so it slows down your heart rate and kicks in the parasympathetic part of the nervous system that can show up and promote good recovery, and that can only just take a few minutes. So most people would have the time to do that if they just prioritize that into the schedule. And here's an example of a couple more activities. A day off doesn't have to be all laying around being lazy, but this person's day off included a nap in the early afternoon that shows up as nice recovery, and then just chatting with a friend. So something positive that we do, it can again lower the shift down the gears and help get into the mode of recovery, and good part of a enjoyable day off in this example. Sleep is an area that we are actually going to have a webinar by a sleep expert next month, or at the beginning of May actually, so it will look more details about strategies and things we can do to help our sleep. These are just some very common sense things. We often talk about the hours before sleep as being the key to that. What you do in the 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. If we can avoid stressful activities and tasks, then things that we know that are going to weaken our recovery or activate our brain, then if we can avoid those, then that's probably the biggest thing we can do to help our sleep. Of course, avoiding high intensity exercise, learning to slow down, doing peaceful, nice routines in the evening is going to help in that area as well. All right, I've talked just about 30 minutes here. I can take a couple of questions. In conclusions, I would just like to say that sort of to find this kind of a balance and learn to integrate recovery into our days, first we start off by considering the overall situation of the person, in what the life situation is, what's realistic, and then determine what are the major challenges that the person is dealing with. And then start thinking what type of activity would provide a good, what I called a counterbalance to that challenge. So whether it's resting and recovering, or maybe light physical activity or exercise or some kind of a hobby. And then not forgetting to consider other stressors that are sure to add to the load. So if it's a stressful period in time, then try to avoid those predictable, what we call ruiners of recovery, and then instead focus on recovery strategies that can work for us. But yeah, that's today's topic on my part. And if there's any questions, I can take one or two here before we finish today. You can write it in the chat window, and I can read it out. The podcast of the webinar will be available in a couple of days on our website if you came in a little bit late. And like I mentioned, a couple of our future webinars, there's an introduction to lifestyle assessment webinar at the end of April that will outline the basics of the method. And then it's all about sleep. Should be a very interesting webinar by an experienced sleep physician on May 9th. And you can find the advertisement for that on our website already. So stay tuned to our webinars. And let's see, there might be a question here. No questions, thank you. So thank you all for participating, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.